David Pakman from the David Pakman Show weighed in on the likelihood of a second term for Donald Trump. Let's watch.
What is the likelihood that you think that Donald Trump would be a one-term president?
I'd like to say that it's very likely. The problem is, it is difficult when presidents run for re-election to defeat them. I mean, the power of incumbency, we know it exists with House and Senate seats, and it exists with presidents as well. So I think that the most likely scenario where Trump doesn't get another 4 years is that he chooses not to run for re-election. Don't you think, Pat? I mean, it's tough to knock off an incumbent president.
I'd have to agree. And a sitting president hasn't chose not to run for re-election since LBJ in the 60s. So it hasn't happened in a while. Yeah.
If you put a gun to my head and force me to pick right now with the very, very limited information that we had as to whether or not Donald Trump will get a second term, I would say yes, he's going to get a second term. For multiple reasons. Again, it's too early to make an actual prediction, and it would just be a guess, not even a too educated a guess at this point. But, I mean, first and foremost, the guy was underestimated every single step of the way. I mean, it's what I've been saying all along. When people said, oh, he's not even going to run, then he decided to run. And then once he was running, people were like, yeah, he's not even going to make it to the debates. And then he made it to the debates. And they're like, well, he's not even going to win the debates. Well, he won a debate. He's not going to win the second debate. He won the second debate. He's not going to lead in the polls. He led in the polls. He's not going to win a single primary or caucus. He won a primary. And then he's not going to win multiple. He won multiple. He's certainly not going to be the nominee. He became the nominee. He's certainly not going to be the president. He became the president. Next step, he's certainly not going to be a two-term president. So you can see it unfolding. Now, again, that logic isn't too sound because there's so many variables in play here, and there's a decent chance the economy just tanks in his time in office, maybe partly because of him, but also because of the shitty regulatory system we have. I mean, we have so many problems. We have so many fundamental flaws in the economy. The subprime mortgage bubble has been reinflated. We got student loan debt crisis on our hands. We have derivatives, which is a whole nother issue. I mean, so we have a stagnating middle-class wages, which is a gigantic problem, which means the middle class doesn't have the purchasing power that they used to. And when they don't have the purchasing power they used to, they have to load up on debt. And when they can't load up on debt anymore, what happens? Everything goes bust. So when people are not there, when there's no people to buy the goods created by the so-called captains of industry, well, then everybody gets fucked. And this is an argument that should have been made to elites all along. Like, no, you don't get it. If we don't lessen this income inequality that we have, well, then you're screwed in the long run too. It's going to blow up in your face also. So the economy could tank under him. And then if that happens, it would be hard for him to get re-election. And it also depends when it happens. So if it happens later, if it happens like 2 or 3 years in, well, actually, I don't know. See, I was going to say if it happens 2 or 3 years in, that might help him more because then he gets to make the argument, I haven't even had the opportunity to address this yet, and this isn't my fault, this is from the previous administration. But then if it happens like a year in, he's actually more likely to make that argument. Hey, it ain't me, it's the guys before me. But 2 or 3 years in or 4 years in, well, then you probably have already implemented some tweaks in the economy that could have led in part to the crash. So I don't know what argument he would make, but let me just say there's a decent chance that with a crash, he gets knocked out, and then somebody else gets elected. But if there's not a crash, it's more likely that he gets reelected. And I think a crash is coming, I just don't know when it's coming. So it'll be interesting to see, and really fucking scary to see. And the ideas that are there when the crash happens matters. I mean, that matters so much. Because if you have somebody in there who doesn't believe in the government's role in the economy, so if you have somebody who says, oh, everything is tanking, that's nice, let's cut government spending, well, then you exacerbate it and make a recession a depression. So the philosophy that's there, this philosophy of, oh, deregulate further because the regulation was the problem, oh, that'll be opening up a whole nother can of worms because that's what happened during the Great Depression. The initial reaction from the government was, well, why don't we just deregulate more and cut taxes more for the rich? And that'll help. So they focus more on that along with deficit reduction and cuts in public spending. Oh, Well, that exacerbated it. They had to go in the other direction. So if you have somebody in there who doesn't believe in Keynesian economics, you have somebody in there who's not of the MMT school of thought. Well, then, good googly moogly. And that might be what Trump does. Trump might go in the wrong direction when that happens. So it's yet to be seen. But I also think when it comes to campaigning, he's a superb campaigner. I mean, he had a 63% unfavorable rating, and he won the election. What does that tell you? He's out there. He's pounding the pavement, man. He did like an insane number of rallies, way more than Hillary Clinton, and he did them in the Rust Belt. He knew which states he had to pick off. He knew he had to break down that Democratic firewall, and he did. And he was out there nonstop, just campaigning nonstop until he was, I was going to say blue in the face, but even more orange in the face. So I think he's a great campaigner. I actually think that people underestimated his populism all along. Everybody focuses on, and for understandable reasons, they say, oh, God, he's saying this xenophobic, bigoted shit, sexist shit, racist shit. In Trump's case, I think that's true. Whether it's the Muslim ban, hey, ban 1.6 billion people from coming into the country, kick out 11 million undocumented immigrants. Let's do nationwide stop and frisk, even though that's been proven to be discriminatory and cracks down on black people, and over 90% of the stops yield nothing, so you're just taking away minorities' Fourth Amendment rights. So people focus on that part of it, but they underplayed the effects of the I'm against trade, I want to keep your job here, I care about manufacturing, I care about, these small factory towns, I care about the people, let's drain the swamp. Like all the other stuff he said, I think resonated a lot. And if you have a Democratic Party that doesn't realize that they have to actually care about the people, well, then of course he can get a second term. So it's yet to be seen, but I think it is more likely than not that he gets a second term. But I'm saying that with reservations because a lot of that is contingent upon how the rest of his time in office unfolds, what he does, what happens with the economy, so on and so forth.